Hello football lovers. La Liga has a Barcelona attack problem. Barcelona's attack was supposed to conquer Europe, over 140 goals and assists, the best trio in Spain, and yet, when it mattered the most, they fell apart. The Champions League dream, crushed. But next season, Hansi Flick is building a much different attack. But how good is this attack, and what can they win? Well, let's talk about it. Last season, Barcelona's attack looked untouchable on paper. When you have Raphinha, Lewandowski, and Lamine leading your front line, you expect fireworks, and that's exactly what they delivered, at least in La Liga. Together, that trio combined for over 140 goal contributions across all competitions. That is not a small number by any standard. This is production on a level of some of the most lethal attacks in Europe. But beyond the numbers, what made this trio so formidable was the variety in their play. You had Lewandowski, the classic number 9, whose movement, finishing, and positioning remain elite. Then there was Raphinha, the high-output wide forward who not only scored, but also provided assists from wide and central areas. And of course, there was Yamal, the rising star, who even at his young age was a team's creative engine, adding flair, unpredictability, and intelligence far beyond his years. Barcelona's offensive unit was stacked. But see, all of that firepower wasn't enough, and that's the real problem. Because when it came to the Champions League, the real battlefield, Barcelona's attack looked blunt when it counted. They got knocked out by Inter Milan in the second leg, and it was more than just bad luck or poor officiating. Yes, there was that clear foul on Gerard Martin that should have been called. That wasn't why Barcelona lost. The truth is, by the time that second leg hit the 90th minute mark, the signs were clear. The attack was tired. Raphinha and Yamal especially were visibly drained. They couldn't break lines. The dribbles lost sharpness. The pressing intensity dropped. And when that's your strongest point, you're exposed. That's what happened. The legs were gone, and so were Barcelona's chances, and that's the worst way to lose. Not because you weren't good enough, but because your best players had nothing left to give. The attack that carried the team through the season suddenly became the weak link, and Flick, watching from the sidelines, knew this. He knew that for all the numbers, the structure wasn't sustainable. He knew Barcelona couldn't run the same players into the ground and expect European glory. That's why this season, Hansi Flick is changing everything, starting from the right wing. When it comes to the right wing, Lamine was without question the heart of Barcelona's creativity last season. At just 16, his impact wasn't just impressive, it was essential. 18 goals and 25 assists for someone that young in his breakout season is remarkable. But even more than his numbers, Yamal showed real evolution under Hansi Flick's guidance compared to what we saw when Xavi was still in charge. We saw a Yamal who was learning how to control matches, not just play in them. His decision improved massively, knowing when to dribble, when to pass, when to unleash that powerful shot he'd been developing. Flick worked on Yar's timing and positioning, making sure he wasn't just running down the flank for the sake of it, but understanding where the spaces would open up. That's the sign of a player maturing quickly, and you could sense that world-class trajectory in him. But there was a clear problem. Barcelona over-relied on Yamal. He became the team's most creative force to the point where when he wasn't on the pitch, the entire attacking structure fell flat. There was no one else who could replicate what he brought in terms of unpredictability, flair, and chance creation. That over-reliance became dangerous because it led to fatigue, especially in the crucial Champions League games. Yamal simply looked burnt out by the end of the season, and for a player that young, that's risky. Hansi Flick wasn't going to let that repeat itself. That's why he prioritized bringing in support for the right wing, and he went straight for Rooney Barty. Barty might not be a household name yet, but his talent is undeniable. A left-footed attacker, Barty is known for his composure in tight spaces, his dribbling, and his ability to cut inside from the left flank, though he's versatile enough to operate on the right when needed. The idea here is clear. Barty gives Flick a proper rotation option in games that are already secured or in domestic cup competitions like the Copa del Rey. Barty can start keeping Yamal fresh for the bigger matches. That way, Yamal is preserved, protected from burnout, and more importantly, always sharp when Barcelona need him most, especially in Europe. Flick is trying to avoid another PD situation, where a young player was played to the point of exhaustion and injuries followed. And this isn't just about fitness. Having someone like Barty on the wings means Barcelona can diversify their attacking routes. If Yamal is doubled up by defenders, Barty gives you another threat as an inverted winger. It creates balance, and that is crucial when you're aiming to compete deep into multiple competitions. But Yamal isn't the only concern for Flick, because while the wings needed depth, the striker position presented a different kind of problem altogether. We can't deny Robert Lewandowski's contribution last season. The numbers speak for themselves. Over 40 goal contributions, consistently delivering in La Liga, and even showing up in the early round to the Champions League. He remains one of the most clinical finishers in world football. His positioning, his instinct in front of goal, his leadership, all of that is still there. But the problem is that Lewandowski is now 36 years old. For a player leading the line in a team that wants to play transition football, that age is a huge factor. Transition football under Flick isn't just about controlled build-up. It demands that the striker can press high, make constant runs, drag defenders out of position, and stay sharp for counters. That's not easy to sustain when you're approaching the twilight of your career. This is exactly why Ferran Torres has become so important to Flick's plan. Last season, Ferran showed that he is more than just a backup. He stepped up when called upon, and his efficiency was impressive. In just 1,921 minutes of football, Ferran scored 19 goals and added 7 assists. That's a goal contribution roughly every 76 minutes, a rate that puts him in the elite bracket when it comes to efficiency. What made Ferran's contribution stand out wasn't just the numbers, but the context. He delivered in matches where Barcelona needed energy, pace, and directness, qualities that Lewandowski can't always provide anymore. Ferran's ability to stretch defenses, play off the last man, and exploit space in behind gives Flick an option that is tailor-made for high-intensity games, especially against teams that like to hold a high line. If Ferran can bring that same form and consistency into this season, Barcelona may not just have a solid backup, they might have the best striker. In La Liga this season, his finishing has improved, his movement is sharper, and he's starting to show better composure in front of goal. The one thing that used to be a weakness in his game. Beyond that, Ferran's versatility means Flick can tweak the system as needed. He can play as a false nine, drift wide, or even play alongside Lewandowski if the situation calls for it. This flexibility is key for Barcelona, especially when rotating across La Liga, the Champions League, and domestic cups. But Flick's reshaping of the attack isn't stopping at the striker position. The number 10 role, the creative hub of the team, is just as crucial, and this season, Barcelona is more loaded in that area than they've been in years. The first name that comes to mind is Pedri. Pedri has been fantastic in that midfield and can also play as an attacking midfielder. His vision, his ability to thread impossible passes, and his intelligence between the lines makes him one of the most technically gifted midfielders in Europe. We've seen it time and again, especially in La Liga. His through balls can unlock even the most compact defenses. But if we're being honest, Pedri is more natural as a central midfielder, someone who links the defense to the attack, who carries the ball forward and controls the tempo from deeper positions. That's where he's most comfortable, and that's where he can impact the game consistently without having the burden of being the sole creative spark. Near the opponent's box, when you push him higher up the pitch into a strict number 10 role, you risk limiting what he does best, connecting play across the entire midfield. That's why Flick in Barcelona, they have them. First up is Dani Olmo. Now, last season wasn't great for Olmo by his standards. For a player of his creative quality, that's underwhelming, especially when the expectation was that he'd bring flair, goals, and assists consistently. But context matters. Last season was his full year adjusting back to Spanish football, the tactical shift from Bundesliga to La Liga, and also dealing with injuries and inconsistency in game time. Dani Olmo is still one of Spain's most technically proficient attacking midfielders. He can operate between the lines, take on players in tight spaces, and has the vision to create opportunities out of nothing. Now with Hansi Flick, we should expect a different Olmo. Flick is the kind of player who maximizes the strengths of technical players. And if there's anyone who can revive Olmo's top form, it's him.